Well, thank you, Stacia, and welcome to my home on Warwick Pond. I'm sorry for the condition where the water is the same color as my grass, but again, I apologize for that. I've been here for 13 years, living here at this location for 13 years, and when I moved here, I heard stories about the airport discharging pollution without an enforceable RIPTES permit in place.
And
So
let's stop right there. What's a RIPTES permit so the public?
Rhode Island Pollution Discharge Elimination System.
And what does that mean? So
That means they're allowed to discharge pollution into a water body under certain conditions.
Okay.
And those conditions are determined by test of either with minnows or goldfish or whatever they use to see how much pollution a water body can take over a period of time and still have acceptable water quality.
Okay.
So using those parameters, the Rhode Island DEM monitors the airport by through sampling and inspections to make sure they're adhering to the permits.
Okay.
So I started then to try to make people aware of that this was an issue, and it was negatively affecting the water quality in Warwick Pond.
When did you start getting involved and to make people aware that you could see this as a future potential issue, that the changes at the airport?
Well, probably maybe 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe around that time when I heard that the airport was going to expand. They were having meetings on the expansion, and I was concerned to make sure that the environmental issues were taken into consideration, because I have a vested interest here.
Of course.
That with the water condition the way it is, no matter what anyone else says, my property values are decreased. They haven't increased; they're decreased with the condition of that water. But that's why I bought my home here.
Okay.
Because of the recreational activities the pond provides.
And you're retired. Your wife is retired. You
yeah.
shared with me that a lot of the residents that live in this area and along the pond, they're retirees.
They're retired also. They've lived here for 30, 40, 50 years.
So this is where people plan on spending the rest of their days. This is it. They want to. And this is a beautiful location. This is a pristine, precious body of water. And it was protected for years. And speaking with you more, and if you look at an aerial shot of, and we have posted this on Warwick Watch, when you go to Google Earth and you take a look at where the pond is located, you can see that it's always been situated in this little nest. With this. When I say nest, because it was right in the middle. It was protected by trees. It was protected by this natural habitat, and a very significant portion of that. On the airport side, where the expansion is taking place, a lot of those trees were cut down, 300 to 400 trees. This was natural protection for this pond.
I believe that had a big impact via the storm that we had, the microburst.
Yes.
Those trees acted as a buffer. The trees that were in the location where Winslow Park is now, the Winslow fields are. It was also a natural stormwater runoff barrier, where the trees absorbed the runoff before it got into the pond.
Okay. So it acted like a natural, kind of like a sponge.
Yes.
It would absorb, so whenever it rained and wherever the runoff was, if it was the pollution on the streets or anything coming from the airport, a lot of that initial absorption would take place in that natural buffer zone area where those trees in those neighborhoods that area. So that was kind of like okay,
the rest
a
of
shield, the first initial shield of protection for this pond. Okay.
And then when we had the microburst, without that buffer there, I believe the trees got damaged on Lakeshore Drive. There are many homeowners there that have trees down and damage to their home.
I saw that.
Because the wind came right across, there was nothing to stop it. Now, if those trees had been there, maybe the wind would have been stopped. Even here, we get additional wind, odor sometimes. we get little spots on the furniture. Looks like it's unburned fuel
Really?
from the engines.
What else do you think has contributed to this
They have
pond
as far as
deterioration?
pollution issues.
Yes.
And again, I don't know if this directly affects the pond, but they have a landfill on airport property
Okay.
at the end of runway 34 that's been there for decades.
There's a landfill there.
Yes.
Okay.
A former truckaway landfill.
Truckaway landfill.
Yes, it's never been clean closed, meaning that pollution discharges into the water via stormwater runoff. It's actually been sampled. There's actually been test wells sunk in that area, but it's never been clean closed. There's also, again, there's been samples that have shown toxic chemicals being discharged into the water. Now, it's right at the entrance towards to Bucky Brook. So, you know, how much effect it has on
responsibility
Warwick?
has it been to regularly test that and provide updates?
DEM. DEM
Okay.
is required to test that, but I believe the last communication I had with them is that the Department of Administration has responsibility for that now, for the landfill.
Okay.
Now, I don't know whether there was supposed to be communication going on between Rhode Island DEM and the Rhode Island Department of Administration
Okay.
on the testing of that landfill. Because I believe, and don't quote me on this, but the last time that was tested was 2008.
Okay.
And it's a requirement when you sink test wells that is periodically you have to, you know, sample for the toxins that are being released. Going to put this new storm water runoff system, which is closed loop, and they were going to plant trees. Now, the 200 or 300 or 400 or so of trees they cut down were probably there for 50 years or more. And
Wow.
what they planted now, I have no idea. I think they're like, you know, little twigs. I don't think they're
Little-
full-grown trees.
No, they're not.
So it's gonna
And
take
half
years.
Of them, half of them, we went over there last week, are dead. They haven't been watered properly. I mean, there's no,
There you go.
what's there now doesn't even come close to what was there for hundreds of years. It just doesn't even come close.
And so that system, we feel, or I feel, that that system has already been breached, where one of the retention basins failed.
Yes.
And again, I don't want to get too technical here.
We posted the first retention area, and then they created another one because it didn't retain, it didn't do its job. And we posted last week another video of the second retention area, and they also installed a couple of drains there to catch that water, because what was happening is all of that excess water was running into everybody's backyard.
Where does the drain go?
Exactly. I'm going to assume it's going underground and
I have no
flowing
idea.
right down
I have no idea.
into Warwick Pond.
As Brolin mentioned, the environmental person at the airport, it percolates. When asked about the condition of Warwick Pond, and mentioned that when the ball fields were being built, and the grass, the sod put down, that or whatever the grass planted, that's when the algae bloom started. And his response was, "Oh no, we had nothing to do with that. We have a closed loop system at those ball fields, and the stormwater runoff percolates." You know, I've been around for a long time, for 72 years. That's how old I am, and I don't look it, do I? Anyway.
No, you don't. You look great for your age, Phil.
Anyway, in other words, let me explain the system
Okay.
again. There's, and again, I'm going to do it simply and, you know,
Yes.
not
101.
detailed.
De-icing
Okay.
collection 101.
There's two pipes going by the de-icing station, recovery station. In those pipes are diffusion valves. Okay, when the de-icing fluid starts flowing through those pipes, there's a sensor on top of the diffusion valve. If the sensor senses that the de-icing fluid is within the permittable discharge limits, the stuff goes right in the water. Okay. When it hits and senses that the de-icing fluid is over the permittable discharge limits, when it senses that it's over the permitted limits, the valves start to close. It could take 10 minutes or longer for the valve to close. So you
in
can
the
imagine
meantime,
what's happening.
So in the meantime, we have de-icing chemicals
in the water.
In the water, out
Like
into
all.
the environment. The rain,
Yeah.
when it rains, that's
Yeah.
it. That's all washing
No,
away, and
yeah.
that's going down the drains and or leading right to the pond.
Yeah.
Potentially to this pond.
Yeah,
Okay.
my information is it goes right into the water.
Okay.
There's no curves, no up and down. It goes right into the water.
Okay.
The outfalls are set so they're right in the water. That's from my understanding.
Okay.
Now, what I would like the airport to do, I would like Kelly Fredericks to do,
Mm-hmm.
and Jay Brolin is to do, is to close the valves. Keep the valves closed, not normally open. Keep them closed.
Closed all the time.
So when that fluid starts coming in there,
Mm-hmm.
it goes right into the de-icing recovery station, and it's recovered.
And we have nothing.
Nothing, well, other than the stormwater, other than
Yes.
what they don't collect,
Yes.
that goes into the groundwater. That's all that will be in the pond.
Okay. What else would you like to see done?
I'd like to see the ball fields come under the RIPTES permit on the airport. It's on airport property.
Mm-hmm.
The fields are on airport
And right
property.
now, it's not being covered under that permit.
I
for
don't
that
believe
testing?
it is. I don't believe so, because if it was, it would be tested.
Mm-hmm.
If it was, they would have known there was a breach there, or maybe sooner than they knew.
And
because
again, to remind the public, what would they be testing at the ball fields if to come under
Phosphorus.
RIPTES? So to come under a RIPTES jurisdiction, I guess
Yeah.
you could say, what they should be doing at those ball fields is testing for levels of what? Phosphorus,
phosphorus and nitrogen.
phosphorus and nitrogen. And so it's too much of that. Again, the fertilizer
Yeah.
and everything that accumulates from the
The
environment.
plants grow out of control, and then they come to a point where they have to start decomposing.
And when they
But they can't-
decompose,
When they decompose,
suck
they
the
suck all the
oxygen.
that's right, suck all
Okay.
the oxygen out of the water.
mm-hmm,
They affect the fish, because then the fish cannot survive because
and then the fish die
And then the
because
fish
they
die.
have no oxygen.
Yes.
And so
And
right now,
you get this.
the
you
blue-green
get,
algae,
That's right.
the
Now you get
cyanobacteria.
a water body that you can't use. You get a
Okay.
water body that you can't come in contact with.
And this water body, you said, so in Warwick Pond, so the way it works, the flow of water is it's Warwick Pond, so Bucky Brook, And
It's
what-
in the Bucky Brook watershed.
so Bucky Brook to Warwick Pond,
No, Spring Green Pond
Spring Green, sorry, okay.
to Warwick Pond
Mm-hmm.
to Bucky Brook, to Old Mill Cove, and into the bay.
Into the bay.
As far as the residents and the homeowners, what I'd like to say, I started this years ago, and would go around. I went door to door to 400 homes, passing out pamphlets. I've put together DVD presentations to try to make the public aware of the situation, the eventuality of pollution, which is here now. And educating the people and the public is very, very important. I'm a simple man, and I look at things simply. In 2013, they started the airport expansion, digging in the earth, okay, uprooting the earth. 2014, they started the ball field, the Windsor Park ball fields, digging in the earth, okay.
Yes.
2015, they started the mitigation project under Lakeshore Drive,
Digging the earth.
digging the earth.
People have asked about that,
So-
what this mitigation project is, and that is so basically explain that a little bit.
When in the wetlands permit, which the airport had to obtain from DEM, the wetlands permit requires that whatever you add, you remove to balance the environment.
Okay.
So they're not theoretically, affecting the wetlands by
Got it.
adding something, and just keep adding something. Eventually, you tilt the environment one way or the other.
Okay.
And the mitigation is to remove what they added. So
Okay.
they had to remove a certain amount of material, and they selected that unnamed tributary that goes from Spring Green Pond under Airport Road, under Lakeshore Drive, and empties into Warwick Pond.
Okay.
The north end of that, which goes from Airport Road to Lakeshore Drive, they widened it. They changed the pipes underneath Lakeshore Drive. Did a lot of good things. I mean, it was a good thing
It's a big
to do.
project. Big
And
project.
a good
yeah.
thing to do. And it also helps the buckies, the herring, coming from Warwick Pond, going through that unnamed tributary into Spring Green Pond. So
Okay.
now they've found that they're spawned in Spring Green Pond also now,
Oh,
so as well as
okay.
Warwick Pond.
So so for the type of oversight, what else would you like to see?
I'd like to see in 2016 the RIPTE's permit expires from the airport.
Okay.
I would like to see more stringent controls there. I would like to see more testing. Right now they test for a storm event. They test one storm event in the first quarter and one in the fourth quarter.
What you'd like to see as far as city responsibility
goes? Well, the
goes?
city to come in compliance with the 2007 TMDL study.
Okay. So they're still not in compliance?
No. There were requirements and mandates issued by DEM that had to be completed by...
For the city of Warwick to be doing what? For example?
Monitoring the storm drains that discharge not only into Warwick Pond, but all the water bodies in Warwick. As far as inspecting them, cleaning them, looking at alternatives that would help limit the pollution going into the water. The reduction required by the TMDL was 33% reduction in phosphorus.
Okay, not too. And what about the drainage mapping? I just shared with you last night at the city council meeting. They're still doing that mapping, and from what I heard, they plan on doing the mapping even up to this area. But you were stating that most of that was done in the past already.
I believe that I was on a project team working with the city.
How long ago? A few years ago? Maybe 2, 3, 4 years?
Well, I left last year.
Okay.
So it was probably 3 years. I've been doing it up until last year.
Okay.
But that project was to try to implement some of the mandates from the TMDL study. But anyway, I believe the storm drains around Warwick Pond have been identified because this is the area we selected first. And then once all these mandates were put into effect, if they worked here, then it would be spread throughout Warwick.
Okay.
That was the idea.
So get the mapping done. So as
get
far
the mapping, inspect the storm drains, educate the public.
Educate the public, and that's what we're doing. So I want everyone to know that the point of doing this with Phil, this is the primary reason is that we believe in education.
Yes, and there's more than that. You know, we started with the Warwick Sewer Authority, trying to send out little notes or reminders with the sewer bill. Pick up after your pet. Remember, don't fertilize or blah, 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 blah.
Don't use toxic,
like
you try to use organic fertilization, right?
Yes. Or no fertilizer.
What about the clippings or no fertilizer?
Yes.
You wash your cars and
That's right.
everything running down the drain.
Everything goes into the water over here. Everything goes into the pond. As I said, 44 storm drains going directly into the pond. 16 storm drains go into the tributaries that feed the pond.
Okay.
So
be responsible. We're going to wrap it up.
Wash your car.
Non-toxic products.
Roundup.
Don't use Roundup.
Grub killer.
Roundup
pick up
is
after your
poisonous.
pets.
Yes, exactly.
Don't feed the geese. What else?
Hook up to the sewers.
But if everyone does their part on this pond, and if everybody follows all the things that I just recommended and all the things that DM recommends, also cutting trees down.
Oh, clippings.
Erosion.
Erosion
has a problem, and that happens when you cut trees down, or you don't build a barrier off the water. The water will erode, and it'll erode the soil, and that soil goes in the water, and it adds nutrients to the water. So, all those things. But again, in my mind, if all the homeowners around Warwick Pond do that, okay, we'll still end up with conditions like this because the main polluter, in my mind, and no one's going to convince me of anything different, is RIAC, the airport. They have to be controlled. Think about
They have a huge responsibility.
Think about the hundreds of thousands of gallons of fluid pollution that have been discharged from the airport over the years. Think about it. Just and for someone to stand there and say, well, it doesn't have an effect. How do they know? 30 years of dumping like that? Well, some of it unregulated. Add to this. Politicians, regulatory bodies, government agencies, do the right thing. Do the right thing for Warwick Pond and for the people who live on it and for the environment.
And it's not just Warwick Pond, because eventually all of this, it starts here and it all leads right out into the bay.